Time to talk to Robert Morningstar. Are you there, Robert?
Yes, I am, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for running that last 10 miles to get home on time. You sound
okay.
You hardly sound winded. It's amazing.
Well, I'm in pretty good shape. I have to admit this is one of the best summers of my life.
Really? Good for you.
Physically, yes.
I got you. Good. Great. Good job. Now, Robert Morningstar, it's been a couple of years since he's been on, is a very, very interesting man with a tremendous length and breadth of knowledge and wisdom that covers many areas. You're, I guess, kind of getting into something new now. Someone passed away. You want to tell us that story and what you may or may not be going to be doing with that? Because it has to do with the UFO field, and we've always been very interested in that.
Yes.
And Robert has had some remarkable stories to tell and events to portray mentally, so we can all hear them, at least try to imagine what they were like in past shows. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sad to report the death of Dirk van der Ploeg, who's the publisher and the founder of UFO Digest. He passed away June 26th in Hamilton, Ontario. And it was a very shocking loss because I'd spoken to him just a few days before, and he sounded very well. And that's all I can say. But I've been asked by the family to continue publishing UFO Digest, and we have continued. We have some very good articles there. Recently by Nick Pope, we have an article about Jim Marrs' new book, and Chris Hawley recounts UFO experiences that happened in Long Island in the 1960s.
Those were remarkable stories. I remember years ago reading about some of them. Jim Marrs' new book, by the way, is sitting here as well. It's called Population Control, How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us.
Yep.
And I would have switched it around. I would have called it How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us. And then the subtitle I would have made Population Control. But Jim and I go way back on the idea of titling books and the struggles therein, as you well know.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I'm a great supporter of Jim Marrs. We share so much in the JFK assassination field.
Yeah.
And this book has brought to light something that I've been referring to for the past many years, a concept for which we have not had the right words. But I coined two words for what is happening in this regard of depopulation. I call it slow genocide and population pruning, and that there is a program targeting certain groups of people.
Yes, there is.
For diminution in the size of their numbers.
European Americans are certainly one of them.
Well, this is one of the most disturbing things that I have ever seen. I want to say that I did not celebrate July 4th this week or last week as would ordinarily have, because I really am starting to feel that this is not the country that I was raised in.
No, my God, no.
I have to say, that I was raised northerner. Yeah. And that's my background culture. But I've always understood the Civil War. I've always sympathized with the plight of the South. I've always respected the heroism of their battles.
Agreed, 100%.
To see this backlash, a black backlash against the flag. This is so redolent of communism. This is communism in our midst.
I also think, Robert, it was a quasi-contrived effort to stampede the sheep into supporting this idiocy, which they successfully did. My God, it's our heritage. It's history. It's part of our country's history.
It's gotten kind of ghoulish in the desecration of the grave of Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, yeah, they removed his statue and then they moved his grave.
Oh, God.
This is really terrible stuff. But, it's all part and parcel of this overall global control of populations and control of what people think. And the cover-up of the UFO phenomenon and the secret space program is at the core of this whole big lie that we have been living, and only now people are really starting to see through the deception and the camouflage and the distractions. So I'm on the show to talk about UFOs, and so I'd like to go in that direction.
Sure.
Again, revisit UFO Digest and tell people that we are continuing. It's wonderful.
What's the site URL, Robert?
It's ufodigest.com.
.com, okay.
And we have an article there by Nick Pope, who writes a column for UFO Digest. And this one's interesting in his perspective on whistleblowers and leaks of national security-related information. So I would direct people to read Nick Pope's article. And I'd like to review what, July 20th, this is one of the most interesting synchronicities of this conversation. Today's the day that Apollo 11 landed on the moon.
Is it really? Oh,
yes.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, and I was watching, I think 1 billion people watched that event.
Well, we watched Stanley Kubrick's back studio footage, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. I really believe they went, but that what was fed to us is filtered and censored. But I want to tell everyone, when you see this videotape replayed of Neil Armstrong descending the ladder to the surface of the moon, I want to assure everyone I was watching that night, and one of the most mind-boggling things about that first transmission is that the camera was mounted upside down, and we didn't see him go down the steps. We saw him go from one corner up the other way.
Really?
And I had this feeling of, wow, I wonder if they're doing that intentionally to bend our minds into this, this concept of another world opposite ours. It was a brief moment, but they've corrected the videotape, and now you see him go down.
Oh, yeah.
Well, gravity was up that night. And,
that's funny. I didn't know anything about that.
It's a lot of stuff. Let me tell you that if you revisit a lot of YouTubes, like CBS histories of events like the JFK assassination, and they say, full CBS report, November 22nd, 1963. I can tell you it's not full. They've edited out several key sequences of film that was shot in Dealey Plaza, and an interview, a very interesting interview with a police officer on the grassy knoll. So the scene that I'm discussing about deletion of films, of scenes, one is a group of men, crew-cut men in suits running down the slopes from the grassy knoll immediately after the assassination and jumping into some cars, convertibles, that are top down, and they all jump into them and race away. And when that was reported at first on CBS that day, they said suspicious men had been seen running from the grassy knoll. They hadn't been identified. Later on in the day, they identified them as members of Army intelligence. So that assuaged everyone's suspicions. But, now we know.
Right, yeah.
So the other one, which is more important, they interviewed a police officer. They ran right up there. CBS ran up there with a camera, and they interviewed a police officer who was holding a shotgun. And he was talking about he had seen suspicious men on the grassy knoll, and he'd asked somebody for identification. He said that the man pulled out Secret Service identification and presented it to him, but that he should have been more suspicious because he had dirty, greasy fingernails, more like a mechanic would, But he had the ID, and so he let him go. They showed that 2 times that afternoon, and forever that interview with that cop has disappeared. And the reason is that cop was J.D. Tippit.
How did he get up there?
I've been telling people for years. J.D. Tippit.
Well, he left there and went to his death not many minutes later.
Right. Exactly. It was a plan, and he had been set up. He was part
Another patsy.
Another patsy. Yes, it was a triple sacrifice, isn't it? You know, I was listening to the previous program regarding, the Arcana. And one of the things that it's kind of a cipher or a code that I broke, getting the lead from William Cooper, who revealed that Dealey Plaza was is a open-air temple to the foundations of Freemasonry in Texas. The first lodge was there in this Dealey pasture. So when he gave that hint, I began to study more and more deeply into the whole thing, the geometry, the numerology, so on and so forth, the astrology. And the astrology of that event is overwhelming. If there was a conjunction of Mars and Venus in the constellation Scorpio. Mars is said to have been in the constellation Scorpio on the night that Osiris was killed. So President Kennedy's assassination was mimicking several historic events.
Well, they don't mess around, do they? They plan these things out. They've got their rituals. They've got all of their little codes and
But the death of President Kennedy was a great, the last straw that really put the operation to kill President Kennedy in the go mode.
Agreed. Sure.
But was the UFO issue. He had, on November 12th, he had communicated with the Director of Central Intelligence and ordered that there be a new review of UFOs, referred to as unknowns. And he wanted to know which were the Army, Navy, and Air Force unknowns as opposed to Russian unknowns, and he wanted to know what was left over because he was hot on the trail of what the UFOs were up to. And
now, certainly, excuse me, but one of a number of things that could have figured in his death, could have gotten him killed. One of a number. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, but I'm saying that was the spark, the final last straw. Of course, the civil rights movement was picking up steam. The speech at American University on June 10th, 1963, when he called for the test ban.
Right. Well, he called for the inspections, if you remember. You still there, Robert? We had a little dip there.
We're getting interference because somebody else is trying to call me at the same time.
Okay.
But I'm not answering. So
now remember, Jack Kennedy also had a bit of a problem with David Ben-Gurion because Kennedy knew damn well they were going to build an atomic and then a hydrogen bomb because there was plutonium being stolen right and left from American nuclear facilities. Even then, Ben-Gurion said, "No, you will not inspect Dimona." Kennedy said, "Yes, we will inspect Dimona." So there's another easy reason for him to be killed.
Well, that is true. And interestingly enough, in that period of time, one of the hotbeds of UFO activity was the Belgian Congo, as it was called then. And why there? The UFOs were hovering around uranium mines in the Belgian Congo. So the UFO issue and radioactivity is intimately related. When we talk about Rendlesham Forest, we're talking about nuclear arsenal. When we talk about the Minot, if you're French, you say Minot. If you're American, you say Minot. Air Force Base incident back in the 1950s. The missiles were retargeted by a UFO that stopped over each missile silo, shone down red light into the area from above. And when the missileers, which is what they're called in the Air Force, the missileers, realized that this was happening, they lost total control of the missiles. They went into a shutdown mode. When Boeing technicians, specialists came in to analyze what happened, they found that something had taken over the entire missile system and changed the targets. One question I would love to know under Freedom of Information is, what did they change those targets to? If they were aimed at Russia and they came in and changed them, what did they want to hit?
That's really interesting.